Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. I stepped into Alex's house and was immediately greeted by Emily and a few of their friends. "We had a little get-together earlier," Alex explained casually, "but they'll be heading out soon." "You want something to drink?" he asked, flashing me a playful wink that, for some reason, made my heart skip. Even the smallest gestures from him made me feel like a nervous teenager. "Sure, why not?" We headed into the kitchen, and Emily followed closely behind. "Alex, I need a refill," she said, her voice slightly slurred. She was clearly not sober, stumbling a bit as she tried to balance herself. "You don't need anything else, Em," Alex replied, concerned. "It's time to call it a night." Emily walked closer and grabbed his hand. I instinctively took a step back and watched as she leaned in and whispered something. "Come upstairs with me." Alex immediately pulled away, his expression one of discomfort. "Oh, I get it," she muttered bitterly. "You're really into guys now, huh? Ever since our incident." I could see the color drain from Alex's face. He glanced at me nervously, but I kept a calm, unreadable expression. I wanted him to know I wasn't judging him. "Emily, enough," he said firmly. "That's all in the past. I've moved on. You should too." Emily stared at him, hurt flashing across her face. She looked like she might argue or even lash out, but instead, she turned and slowly walked away. Once everyone had finally left, including Emily, Alex let out a breath of relief. "Sorry about that," he said, chuckling awkwardly. "It's fine," I replied with a soft smile. He double-checked the house to make sure it was just us, then poured me a drink. We settled in the living room as soft music played in the background. "So, when do you start your new job?" he asked. Is he trying to make small talk now? I thought, why doesn't he just talk about something more meaningful, or maybe just kiss me? No, I can't think like that. Not after the other day. I just complicate things. "Monday," I answered, "but I have to go through orientation and stuff first." Before he could say more, he gasped slightly and raised a finger to his lips, motioning for silence. "What?" I whispered. "This song," he said, grinning. It was After the After Party by Charlie XCX, one of my favorite songs. I grinned back, remembering how it played at that party a while back. Kind of a blur though, because, well, I may have overdone it that night. Alex mouthed the lyrics, nodding along to the beat. Then he stood up. "Please don't dance." "I'm grabbing another drink," he said before disappearing into the kitchen. I exhaled in relief. He didn't dance, which meant he wouldn't see my horrible dancing either. He returned moments later, proudly holding a bottle. "Make yourself at home," he said with a grin as he sat down beside me. "Will do," I replied with a smirk, placing my legs across his lap. "Thanks." Alex shook his head and chuckled but didn't move my legs. Instead, he gently rested his hand on them, holding his drink in the other. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said after a pause. "Sure," I replied. "Does your dad know that you're gay?" I shook my head. "My mom does, and so does her boyfriend, but I've never told my dad." "Why not? Do you think he'd react badly?" His tone had shifted. He sounded genuinely concerned. "I don't think he'd be angry or anything. I don't know. I guess I worry he'd be disappointed. Like deep down, even if he said the right things, part of him might still wish it wasn't true." Alex nodded slowly. "I think he'd be proud of you, honestly. You deserve to be open about who you are." His hand gave my leg a reassuring squeeze. And it did more than just comfort me. We continued talking for a while until his phone rang, cutting through the moment. I assumed it was mine at first, but Alex pulled his out and answered. "What's up?" he said, listening intently. He stood up, held up a finger as if to say wait here, and stepped into another room. He came back a few minutes later, visibly stressed. "If you need to take care of something, I can go," I said as I started to stand. "No," he said quickly, reaching out and gently pulling me back down. "Last time, our night got interrupted because of a phone call." I'm not letting that happen again. Please stay. I looked down at our hands still touching. This man, he was really getting to me. If you're sure, I said softly. He nodded with a smile. Come on, I've got more drinks in the other room. I followed him through the house into a back room. In one corner stood a huge cabinet filled with bottles. It practically looked like a mini bar. As he scanned the labels, trying to decide, I just watched him. His face. It was perfect. I started overthinking everything. Should I kiss him? Would it be too weird? He's my dad's boss, after all. But also, he's him. I tried to kiss you once, I said quietly. I wasn't sure I wanted to bring it up, but it had been on my mind too long. Alex turned from the bottles and looked at me. He met my eyes, then nodded. Do? Like me? He asked carefully. I took a breath. You're kind to me. You make me feel safe. You're fun to be around. And yet, you're attractive too. I know we haven't known each other long, but honestly, how could anyone not like you? Alex glanced down with a shy smile and bit his lip. That simple gesture nearly made my heart race. When he looked back up, I saw something in his eyes, something I couldn't quite read. If you want to kiss me, he said softly, then do it. My eyes widened. Was he serious? Do I? If you want to kiss me, then do it. My eyes widened slightly. Was he serious? Do I? Maybe he was just tipsy and caught in the moment. Or maybe this was real. Because honestly, I was feeling the same way. But you're my dad's boss, I whispered. What would happen if he found out? Alex shook his head gently. That doesn't matter right now. What matters is this alone, no distractions. He stepped closer and placed a hand gently on my cheek. Our eyes locked. Slowly, he moved his other hand to my waist, pulling me closer. Then, without another word, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't rushed or messy, it was soft, intentional. The kind of kiss that feels like it was waiting to happen. I kissed him back. It was everything I imagined, slow, emotional, and full of unspoken feelings. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer until there was no space between us. I slid my arms around his shoulders, holding onto him tightly, as if the moment might disappear. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt right. Alex guided me backward gently until I felt the wall behind me. Our lips never parted. I lost myself in the moment until I had to pause to catch my breath. Still breathless, I leaned in again, just one more time. But then his expression shifted. He looked unsure, like something was weighing on him. A tension I hadn't noticed before. You're gonna have to head home soon, Alex said softly. I blinked, confused. Why? I've got a lot of work I still need to finish. Honestly, I probably should have invited you over tomorrow instead, he admitted. But I really wanted to celebrate with you tonight. I looked down, my heart sinking a little. Oh, right. I'm sorry, he added quickly, lifting my chin to meet his eyes. I smiled weakly to show him it was okay, but the truth was, I felt a little cold, a little rejected. Like something had been cut short, or maybe wasn't meant to happen at all. We sat for a bit longer, drinking and talking. But it wasn't the same. That spark? It had faded. Or maybe I just couldn't feel it anymore. When the time came, Alex called for one of his drivers to take me home. He walked me to the front door, and I could see the car waiting outside in the long, tree-lined driveway. Next time, he said, giving me a brief kiss on the lips. I returned the kiss, short and soft. Good night. That night, I lay in bed with a small smile on my face, despite the bittersweet ache in my chest. The next morning, Dad woke me up early. "Want to go out for a little celebration?" he asked. "My treat. We can shop, grab a bite to eat." Of course, I said yes. I couldn't say no to free stuff. We browsed through a few shops, and he insisted on buying anything I even looked at. I didn't mind. That was his way of showing affection. Eventually, we stopped at a restaurant for lunch. "Lucas," Dad began as we waited for our food, "your mom was upset you didn't visit." I sighed, picking up my fork as the plates arrived. Truthfully, I hadn't felt like going. I wanted to spend more time with Alex. I wanted to see if there could be more than just whatever this was. "I've got my new job now," I replied casually. I'll go see her when I get some time off. Dad nodded, accepting my answer. I just like having you here. I know you won't be around forever, you'll have your own life soon, but while you're here, I want to make the most of it. I smiled. I'm just a waiter, Dad. I'll be here for a while. He chuckled, then paused. I just realized. I've never really asked, do you have anyone special? A girlfriend or someone? I hesitated. I wanted to tell him. Not about Alex. But the truth. I just didn't know how. I'm working on it, I said with a half smile, looking down at my plate. We finished lunch and continued shopping for a bit before heading home. Later that evening, I was lying on my bed, texting a few people. That's when Alex's name popped up on my screen. I opened the message right away, already smiling, but it disappeared the moment I read it. Alex, I think things moved too fast. It was probably just a moment of impulse. I'm sorry. I need some space. I stared at the message, stunned. My chest tightened. I blinked fast, trying to keep it together. Was this really just a drunken mistake to him? Why did he let me kiss him if he didn't want it? Is it my fault? Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. I told myself to stop, to brush it off like it was nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. He had invited me. He had flirted, teased, offered rides, gifts, everything. And now this? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. Fine. If he wants space, he'll get space. And when he decides he wants me around again, I won't be waiting. Monday came. My first day at work. Dad gave me a lift, but I knew I'd have to figure out my own way soon. After orientation and some quick training, I got started. I was excited, but nervous. The place was upscale, full of business people, executives, and rich families. Definitely the kind of place Alex would eat. Stop thinking about him. After my shift, I wandered into a nearby bar and ordered a drink, just one to celebrate surviving my first day. That's when a guy slid into the seat next to me. He looked around my age, maybe a bit older. He glanced my way and gave me a slow once-over. Subtle, I thought sarcastically. But honestly, maybe this was what I needed to stop thinking about Alex. You want to go somewhere? He asked with a smirk. I paused. Maybe I just didn't want to be alone. Maybe I needed a distraction. Sure, I said, standing up. I spent the night at his place. His name was Ryan. I didn't even know that until I was about to leave. It wasn't romantic and it wasn't smart, but I didn't regret it either. It was a way to forget, even just for a little while. I left around 3 a.m., quietly slipping out and catching a taxi home. It was too late to call Dad. By the time I climbed into bed, the house was silent. I stared at the ceiling, and though I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, one thing was clear. Alex had left a mark I couldn't shake. I let myself sleep in a little longer, figuring I'd still have plenty of time to get ready for work. But even with the extra rest, I felt drained, and I'd only been at this job for 5 days. It had also been 5 days since Alex told me he needed space. The urge to text him came often, but I resisted. I didn't want to pull myself back into something I knew deep down wasn't going to work. He clearly struggled with his emotions, with love. Still, my heart didn't seem to get the memo. It kept holding on to him. My shift started early today, 2 p.m., so I had just over an hour to get ready and head out. When I got downstairs, I noticed Dad's work case on the sofa. That was strange. He was usually meticulous about these things. I called him while I was getting ready. Dad, you left your work case on the couch? I said once he picked up. There was a beat of silence on the line. Oh no, he said, clearly flustered. I didn't even realize. I was rushing this morning. My boss asked me to come in early and I must have forgotten. Do you want me to bring it? I offered. I might still make it before my shift. That would be amazing. Thank you. I finished getting ready in a hurry, skipped breakfast, grabbed his case, and called a taxi. As it drove through town, my nerves started acting up, mostly because I realized I might run into Alex. That was the last thing I wanted right now. The traffic was terrible. I hadn't seen it like this before, probably because I didn't usually pass through this part of town. I kept checking the time, worried I was going to be late. When I finally reached Dad's office, I rushed upstairs and handed him his case like it was on fire. "What time is it?" I asked urgently. He glanced at his laptop. 1:56. My eyes widened. "What?" I barely said goodbye before darting out of the office. Instead of waiting for the elevator, I sprinted down the stairs, 5 floors, and halfway down I started regretting that decision. Once I hit the ground floor, I pulled out my phone and texted my boss, letting her know I might be a few minutes late. Still rushing and distracted by my phone, I didn't see where I was going. I collided straight into someone's chest, hard enough to send my phone flying out of my hand. Then I looked up and froze. Alex. Out of all the people. I stared at him, not hiding the annoyance in my expression, before quickly turning away to retrieve my phone. I picked it up and flipped it over, only to find the screen covered in cracks. "I'm really sorry," Alex said, his eyes wide with concern. I didn't respond immediately. I just kept looking at him. "I didn't mean to bump into you," he continued, his voice softer. "Are you okay?" I sighed. As much as I'd love to stay and chat, I'm about to be late for work. "I can drive you," he offered. I shook my head. "It's fine. I'll manage. Besides, you're the one who needed space, remember?" And with that, I walked away. I didn't wait for his reply. Okay, maybe that was a little petty, but I am a little petty. I called for another taxi, which, of course, got stuck in traffic again. I ended up arriving 15 minutes late. Sweaty and out of breath, I rushed through the building and into the back room, where my boss spotted me. "I'm so sorry I'm late," I blurted out. "The traffic was terrible and—" "Take a breath," she interrupted gently. "We're doing just fine. Just try not to let it happen again. Go cool off before you start." Her expression shifted as she looked me over more closely. "Are you okay? You don't look well." I forced a small laugh. "I'm fine." She didn't seem convinced, but she nodded and walked away. Truthfully, she was right. I hadn't been feeling like myself lately. I hadn't been eating much. I wasn't sleeping well. It wasn't heartbreak, not really, but this constant anxiety was wearing me down. Especially at work. For some reason, I kept rushing between tables like the place was packed, when in reality, it was only half full. My nerves wouldn't settle. I was overthinking everything as usual. When I entered the kitchen to put up some orders, Danny, one of the servers, stopped me. "Lucas, slow down. You're working way too hard and it's showing. You look like you're about to pass out. Why don't you switch to just serving instead of running all over the place?" He placed a hand on my shoulder, offering a kind smile. I sighed and nodded, walking further into the kitchen. My stomach growled. I really should have eaten. The hours dragged by. With only 30 minutes left in my shift, I felt completely drained. My body was overheating, my thoughts felt fuzzy, and I could barely stay upright. Still, I tried to push through. I picked up a plate to take out to a table, but as I took a step forward, the room spun. I stumbled slightly, and a few coworkers looked over in concern. I reached out to steady myself on a nearby surface, but the second my hand touched it, I realized it was a hot tray straight out of the oven. Pain surged through my palm. Bad decision. Really bad. My vision blurred slightly, speckled with stars, but I could make out one of the girls from the kitchen rushing over and taking the plate from my hands. Danny and one of the guys grabbed hold of me to keep me steady as I swayed. I groaned, glancing down at my hand, lifting it slowly to see what had happened. Danny immediately led me to the sink and ran cold water over it. I stared numbly at the red, stinging area, right on the palm near my thumb. The moment felt like a dream, surreal and hazy, but the pain confirmed it was all too real. "Lucas, what were you thinking?" Danny asked, clearly worried as he kept my hand under the stream. I tried to breathe steadily, focusing on each inhale before answering. I didn't mean to," I said between sharp breaths. "Of course you didn't," he muttered, shaking his head, trying not to sound harsh but clearly concerned. I turned to look at him, but something caught my eye. Our manager had walked in. "What's going on here?" she asked sharply, eyes darting to me. "It was an accident," I replied quickly. My hand was still under the running water. Danny had quietly stepped away, probably not wanting to get caught up in the situation. She sighed, looking more frustrated than angry. "Come with me to the back. There's a first aid kit," she said firmly and turned, expecting me to follow. I shut off the tap and trailed behind her. In the back room, she motioned for me to sit. To my surprise, she was unusually gentle as she opened the first aid kit and began applying a burn cream to the injured part of my hand. It stung terribly. "I'm really sorry," I said, watching her work. "I messed up my shift. I didn't mean to cause trouble." She looked at me for a second, her tone softening. "Is something going on with you? At home? A relationship? Anything like that?" I blinked, confused. "Not really. Nothing that serious." "Well, you've been off all day," she said as she cleaned around the burn. "You showed up late, looked completely out of it, sweating, distracted. You seemed like you might collapse." "I nearly did," I admitted quietly. "That's how I ended up burning myself." She paused, then gently pushed her brown hair behind her ears as she took out a roll of bandage. "It's a good thing you've got the next 3 days off. I can't let you keep working like this." I looked down at my bandaged hand. "I thought you were going to fire me, but instead, you helped me." She gave me a small, kind smile. "I couldn't just send you home without making sure you were okay." "You're sending me home?" Best surprised. "There's only 20 minutes left in your shift anyway," she said with a shrug. I nodded, sighing softly as I pulled out my phone to call a taxi, only to realize the screen was cracked. I had completely forgotten about that. It still worked, though, so I managed to book a ride and tried to relax during the trip home. As I stepped into the house, I prepared myself for the inevitable questions from my dad about the bandage. But what I wasn't prepared for was who else was in the kitchen. My father and Alex. "What are you doing here?" I asked Alex, unable to hide the frown on my face. "Your dad and I were discussing some work-related things," he replied casually. "Just business stuff, nothing you'd be interested in." Dad smiled warmly at me, but Alex just stared. Not in a rude way, though, more like he was observing me. I looked away quickly, only to turn back when I heard my dad gasp. "What happened to your hand?" he asked, concern immediately overtaking his features. "It's nothing," I muttered, trying to downplay it. He didn't buy it. "I didn't feel well at work," I began. I got lightheaded and reached out to steady myself, but I grabbed the stove instead. My hand was on it longer than I realized. His eyes widened, and even Alex's expression changed, a flicker of concern crossing his face. Maybe he did care after all. "Who dressed the wound?" Dad asked. "My boss," I said, glancing down at the bandage. "Did you run it under cold water first?" he asked. I nodded. "For about a minute, I think. I don't really remember." He sighed, already stepping into action. "Let's do this properly." He unwrapped the bandage gently, then placed my hand under cold water again. After a few moments, he excused himself to go wash up, leaving me alone in the kitchen with Alex. I stood at the sink, running cold water over my burn. I could feel Alex's eyes on my back. His footsteps approached slowly, and soon he leaned against the counter beside me. I could see him in my peripheral vision, just watching me. I didn't want to look at him, didn't want him to think I cared. But the longer he stood there, the more tempting it was to turn and face him. Eventually, I gave in. "I can't seem to get rid of you, can I?" I said, keeping my voice neutral as I met his gaze. Alex chuckled quietly and shook his head. "You just happen to be wherever I am." "Yeah, in my own house." "Go figure," I replied, still focused on the running water. He grinned in response, but then the smile softened. "Can we talk?" he asked, more serious now. "Not right now. My dad will be back in here any second." I glanced toward the hallway. "When then?" he asked. I didn't have time to answer. My dad walked back into the kitchen, and Alex stepped away. Once my dad had finished wrapping the bandage on my hand and resumed his conversation with Alex, I excused myself and headed upstairs. I changed into a pair of joggers and climbed into bed. The warmth of my blanket wrapped around me, and I was beyond grateful for the 3 days off I had ahead. I needed the rest. I was nearly asleep when I heard footsteps in the hallway and Alex's voice. He was speaking quietly, probably on the phone. The bathroom door opened and shut. I debated staying cozy in bed, but something in me wanted to talk to him. Maybe even needed to. I climbed out of bed and cracked my door open. As Alex stepped out of the bathroom, we nearly collided. He looked surprised for a second but then smiled as I stepped back. "Sorry," I said with an awkward smile. "So much for smooth." I backed into my room, and before I could say anything else, he spoke. "Do you think we can talk now?" Alex asked, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. "What about my dad?" I asked cautiously. I told him I had a phone call to make and that I'd be a while. That was mostly true, the call's just finished, he said with a small shrug. I hesitated, then stepped back, letting him into my room. "I want to start by saying I'm really sorry," he began, his eyes serious. "The way I texted you, just cutting things off like that, it must have hurt." I nodded, raising an eyebrow. "You're not wrong. But why'd you do it in the first place?" Alex looked down, exhaling slowly before meeting my eyes again. "After you left my house, after I kissed you, I panicked. I started overthinking everything. What people would think, if I rushed things. I wasn't ready. I didn't mean to mislead you, but I know I did." I stood quietly for a moment, absorbing his words. I looked down at the floor, unsure what to say. Then I felt his fingers brush gently against mine. "Lucas," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I looked up. He was close, just a few inches away. "Let's try again. Please. Can we?" I thought long and hard. He had hurt me. Part of me had written it all off as a dumb fling. But now, maybe it wasn't. Maybe he really meant it this time. Still, there was the risk. What if he changed his mind again? "But I've always believed you only live once." I gave him a small smile, my fingers slowly intertwining with his. "Yeah, I guess we can." His smile widened, and he stepped closer, resting a hand on my side. Our faces were close, and our noses gently brushed. Then he leaned in and kissed me. It was soft and warm, and though it deepened just slightly, we kept it simple. I pulled away slowly, smiling like an idiot. He looked the same. "I better go before your dad gets suspicious," Alex said with a quiet laugh. I nodded. Our hands separated and he left the room. I climbed back into bed, still grinning. It felt good to have cleared the air with him. Still, a small part of me wondered if I was setting myself up for heartache again. The next morning, I woke up around 10 a.m., feeling a whole lot better than the day before. I still hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, so I made some breakfast and checked my phone. Dad had already left for work. I smiled when I saw a message from Alex. "Alex, I want to take you out somewhere. Let me know if you're up for it. Consider it part of me making things right." I smirked and typed back, "Me, if you call it a date, I'll come." Maybe I was pushing my luck, but it was worth the tease. "Alex, fine, it's a date. But if I ever officially ask you out, it'll be somewhere more special than this. So, I'm not taking my chances tonight." My heart fluttered. Was that a hint? Then another message came through. "Alex, be home at 7 p.m. That's when I'm picking you up." I replied with a simple, "Okay," and finished my breakfast. Later that day, I invited Amy over to catch up. We'd spoken here and there since I started work, but I hadn't had time to fully explain everything that had happened with Alex. She walked in like she owned the place and flopped onto the couch next to me. "What are you watching?" she asked. "This new show called Eyewitness. Two guys witness a triple homicide while, spending time together in a cabin. It's actually really good. A little dramatic, but worth watching." "Never heard of it," Amy said, settling in beside me. "It's not super popular, mostly out in the US. I may or may not be watching it through creative means." She laughed, and I turned off the show, putting something random on in the background so we could talk. I filled her in on everything. The kiss with Alex, his mixed signals, and how we made up the night before. She immediately started ranting about how unfair it was that he was the one who needed space after he kissed me. She wasn't wrong, and we both knew it. "Anyway," she smirked, did I or did I not tell you he liked you?" I laughed. "You did. I'm right about everything. Too bad he's not into girls. I could have made a move," she joked, pouting dramatically. He did have a girlfriend, remember? So maybe he's bi. Or maybe that was just a cover, Amy replied thoughtfully. Whatever he is, it doesn't matter, as long as things work out this time, I said. She giggled, clearly enjoying the whole situation. After that, we moved on to talking about her chaotic family life. Honestly, it made me feel lucky I didn't live with my half-siblings. They always asked me to buy them stuff, like snacks and sometimes things I wasn't comfortable getting them. I used to give in, but eventually I drew the line. They guilt-tripped me, but I stood my ground. I was too old to deal with the drama, and too old for my mom to be trying to scold me. Before I knew it, it was 7 p.m. I told Amy I was heading out with Alex, and she happily left, after reminding me to have fun in the most dramatic way possible. I heard a knock at the door and opened it to find Alex standing there, smiling. I grabbed my things, locked up the house, and got into his car. He gave me a soft smile as we drove off into the night. And for the first time in a while, I felt hopeful. We arrived at a sleek, upscale cafe in the heart of the city and found a table. The moment we sat down, I noticed heads turning. People were definitely staring at Alex, some likely recognizing him, others sneaking not-so-subtle photos. It made me squirm in my seat. "Are you sure you want to stay here?" I asked, glancing around as a few more people lifted their phones. Alex let out a quiet breath and nodded. "Yeah. It's just, people might think we're on a date," I added cautiously. "It doesn't look that way. Most people will probably assume we're just friends or business associates," he replied casually. Something about how easily he dismissed the idea of us being on a date stung more than I expected. I frowned, but he didn't seem to notice. "Get over yourself, Lucas." We ordered our food and chatted while we ate. I tried to steer the conversation towards something more personal, maybe even about us, but it felt like too many ears were around. Sensing that Alex wasn't comfortable, I let the subject drop. Later that evening, we headed back to his place. I'd always loved being there. His house had this calming warmth to it that made me feel safe. Once inside, we went straight to the kitchen. I watched as Alex rummaged through the fridge. "What are you doing?" "We literally just ate," I said with a chuckle. "I don't know," he replied with a grin. "I just like food. Want anything?" I laughed and shook my head. "No, I'm good." He shrugged and started cooking anyway. I leaned against the island in the middle of the kitchen, casually watching him move. There was something about the way he carried himself, confident but relaxed. After a few minutes, he turned toward me. "Got to let it simmer for a bit," he said, stepping closer. He moved right in front of me, his arms resting on either side of the counter, caging me in gently. I smiled as he leaned forward and softly kissed me. The kiss deepened, warm and full of something unspoken. I wrapped my arms around his shoulders as he rested his hands on my back. The connection between us was electric, like we were finally breaking past whatever walls we'd both been hiding behind. But then, a sudden flash of light broke through my closed eyes. I pulled away instantly, startled as Alex jumped back. I practically slid, more like stumbled, off the counter, barely avoiding the hot stove behind me. We both turned toward the source of the flash and froze. Standing there, phone in hand, was Emily. She had just taken a photo. We were still processing what happened when she looked down at her screen, clearly doing something with the photo she had just snapped. My mouth hung open in shock. Alex's jaw tightened as he glared at her. Why would you do that?" he asked, his voice sharp. Emily just smirked and didn't answer. "How did you even get in here?" Alex snapped again, slowly stepping toward her. "You left your door open," she said casually, still smirking. I leaned against the counter nervously, watching tension ripple through the room like a storm about to break. "Emily, why would you do that?" Alex's voice was louder now, trembling with restrained anger. Her smile faded. "After everything you've done to me, you deserve it." There was a long pause. I could see Alex struggling to find the right words. Finally, he spoke. "Emily, if you go through with this, you'll lose your business. Did you forget that we're partners?" He raised an eyebrow, now wearing a smirk of his own. Emily's face twisted, her voice flat. "Then so be it. You'd seriously destroy your own career just to hurt me?" Alex asked, disbelief creeping into his tone. "That's really low, Emily." She didn't flinch. Instead, she held up her phone, showing us the photo. I felt my stomach drop. Without warning, Alex snatched the phone and threw it against the wall. It shattered on impact, pieces skittering across the floor. I jumped back in surprise. Still, Emily didn't look shaken. "While you two were playing house, I already sent the photo to my other phone. So that was pointless." Alex's eyes blazed. "Get out of my house. Or I'm calling the police." Emily held her smirk for another second, then turned and walked out, leaving the broken phone behind. The door slammed. Silence. Alex turned around, his expression heavy with frustration and guilt. He leaned against the counter and let his head drop into his hands. I hesitated before reaching out to comfort him, but he brushed my hand away without a word. I stepped back, stunned, watching the pain flicker in his eyes. "I'm sorry," Alex said softly, taking a hesitant step closer to me. I didn't respond. He reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold it back either. His eyes, glassy with unshed tears and frustration, met mine, and for a moment, guilt tugged at me for not trying harder to comfort him. The look in his eyes made me want to wrap him up in a hug and tell him everything would be okay. So, I gently laced my fingers through his and pulled him toward me. I hugged him, holding him close, and eventually his arms returned the gesture. When we finally pulled apart, worry clouded his expression. "It'll be okay," I tried to reassure him, though I could tell it didn't do much to ease his mind. "She's going to ruin everything," Alex began, voice trembling. "She's going to post that picture and destroy everything I've worked for." He looked down, then back at me, his voice hardening. "But before she does, I'm going to make sure she doesn't get the chance." "No, don't do that," I said quickly, shaking my head. He frowned. "If you go after her, she might still release the photo anyway. You don't even know what she's planning. This could just be her way of pressuring you into something." Alex looked away. "I don't know. I'm not sure anymore." That night, he couldn't stop worrying. He kept pacing and staring at his phone, texting Emily over and over, begging her not to do anything. She didn't reply. He even tried calling her a few times, but she never answered. "Alex, stop stressing. It's going to be fine." "What do you know, Lucas?" he snapped suddenly. "You don't understand what could happen if this gets out. You've got it easier than me." His anger faded almost as quickly as it came. He ran his hands over his face with a groan. "I'm sorry. I keep taking this out on you." I stood up with a quiet sigh. "I'm just going to go home. You need some space to think, and honestly, I'm not helping." I didn't mean to make him feel guilty, but from the look on his face, I knew I had. He stood up quickly, shaking his head. "Don't go, please," he said softly. "You need time," I replied gently. "We'll talk again soon, whenever you're ready." Even though he'd been a bit difficult, I didn't blame him. I reached for his hand one last time, pulled him in, and gave him a light kiss on the lips. Then I walked out. Before I left, he asked one of his drivers to take me home. When I got in, my dad was in the living room. He offered to change my bandage and check the burn. I thanked him, then went upstairs to my room. Later that night, I texted Alex, "Are you okay?" His reply came quickly, "It would be much better if you were still here, but yes." We kept texting through the night, talking about anything and everything until he finally said he needed to sleep since work came early. The next day, we continued texting while he was at work. He seemed unusually responsive, probably holed up in his penthouse, avoiding everyone as he tried to calm himself down. "Alex, call me. I'm bored." A grin spread across my face. I called him, and he answered almost immediately. "Hi," he said. "Hey, are you doing okay today?" I asked. "Sort of," Alex replied. I finally talked to Emily. She said it's just a matter of time before the photo comes out. I'm freaking out, obviously, but at least now I can prepare. "Well, I'm really sorry," I said quietly. "No, it's not your fault. It's mine," Alex admitted. "But I don't regret anything. This is who I am, and I'm not going to hide that just to protect my company. Sure, it's risky, but it's the 21st century. People shouldn't care so much about who someone loves." I hesitated, then said, "It's not like we're dating anyway. We're just figuring things out. As long as no one sees anything suspicious between us, people probably won't say much." I knew I was downplaying it and it stung to say those words, but I wanted to reassure him. I heard him chuckle softly. "Lucas, if I were going to ask you out, I'd make it way more special than this. Right now, I'm just a guy sitting alone in a penthouse, and you're probably lounging at home. I'd pick a much better moment." He always had a way of making me smile, even in the middle of chaos. My 3 days off from work passed far too quickly. My hand had started to heal, but mentally, I wasn't ready to return just yet. Still, my dad offered to drive me, since he had the day off too. I really needed to learn how to drive and finally get my license, and maybe a car. Sometimes I felt way too lazy for real life. As soon as I walked into work and headed to the back, I was met by my boss. "How are you feeling now?" she asked with a blank expression. She looked upset, not at me, but at something else entirely. Honestly, that's how I preferred her. When she was nice, it felt I held up my hand. "It's healing, kind of. I'm doing a lot better. I've been sleeping more and eating properly." She gave me a brief smile. "Good. Welcome back. Now get to work." The shift was easier than usual, at least for the first half of the day. I hoped I hadn't jinxed it. My boss kept a close eye on me, which made me feel uncomfortable, but I understood why. After nearly fainting in her kitchen and burning my hand, probably triggering a mountain of health and safety reports, she had every reason to be cautious. As the restaurant started filling up, I did my best to stay focused. But I couldn't help but think, maybe I wasn't cut out for this kind of job. Eventually, my shift ended. I caught a taxi to Amy's place because we had plans to hang out. She'd been dealing with some family issues and needed a distraction, so I thought taking her out might help. We grabbed dinner, then headed to an arcade. I hadn't been to one since I was around 14. It was fun, nostalgic even. We laughed a lot, talked about our friends, most of whom were drowning in schoolwork or busy jobs. Meanwhile, I was clearly the last one to join the so-called hardworking club. After a few hours, I left Amy's and decided to walk home. I wanted a little time alone with my thoughts. I wasn't stressed exactly, I just liked being in my own head sometimes. As I neared home, I got bored of my inner monologue and started texting Alex. We exchanged messages for a bit, but I noticed his replies were growing shorter, more distant. Something was off. So, I asked if everything was okay. "Alex, I'm scared about this whole thing with Emily. I know I said I didn't care what people think about my identity, but maybe I was lying to myself. I don't think this is going to end well." "It can't." I frowned, rereading his message. Then I typed a reply. "Me, what are you trying to say? Are you starting to regret everything between us, whatever this is?" "Alex, no. That's not what I mean. I want this." "I do. But I just know Emily isn't going to let this go. I can already picture it, headlines, gossip, everything blowing up. Me, look, I know it's scary, but maybe something good can come out of this. People tend to make a big deal when someone public opens up, but then they move on to the next thing. If your career is affected, that says more about the people in charge than about you. It's no one's business who you care about. If this goes public, just ride the wave. People forget fast. Honestly, the world's becoming more supportive of LGBTQ+ stories now. Who knows? You might even gain support from companies and fans. Just try to see the brighter side, okay?" By the time I finished typing, my thumbs were sore, but it was worth it. I didn't want him to spiral into doubt again. I knew how that would end, and it would hurt both of us. A few minutes later, he responded, "Alex, if this does go public, I really hope it turns out okay. Thank you. I really needed that. But it's not just the public I'm worried about." I had just walked into the house while typing my reply, completely distracted. I made my way to the kitchen to find something to eat, but didn't see anything appealing. So I wandered into the living room instead. That's when I froze. My dad was sitting on the couch, staring at the wall. The TV was off. He wasn't moving. For a second, my brain jumped to irrational conclusions. But I shook the thought off and walked toward him to ask what was wrong. Then I saw his face. His eyes were red and watery, cheeks stained from tears. His expression broke my heart. He never cried. "What's wrong?" I asked softly, worry flooding my chest. He took a shaky breath, wiping his face, but the tears kept falling. He looked up at me and took a moment before speaking, his hands rubbing together in a nervous rhythm. "Richard called," he said slowly, struggling to stay composed. I blinked, confused. That name meant little to me in that moment. I didn't understand the connection. My dad saw the confusion on my face and continued, voice trembling. "It's your mum, Lucas?" His voice cracked as his eyes filled again. "She had a heart attack." He swallowed hard before finishing, barely able to say it. "She passed away." Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.